On May 9, 2026, inside a hall in Abuja, two political movements that had spent 3 years operating separately walked through the same door at the same time. Obi's Obidient movement came in chanting. Obi Kwankwaso's Kwankwasiyya came in chanting. And for a few minutes, before the speeches, before the internal disputes, before the exit rumors and the Kano ticket fights, they were chanting the same thing. Obi Kwankwaso. OK. The OK movement. That moment and everything that happened before and after it is what this video is about. Not the symbolism, the mechanics. Because Nigeria has seen symbolic political alliances before. It has seen North-South tickets before. It has seen youth energy before. It has seen opposition coalitions announce themselves with fanfare and dissolve with silence. What Nigeria has not yet seen is a third-party coalition with the combined structural weight of the Obidient movement and the Kwankwasiyya actually translate that weight into ward-level organization, legislative candidate pipelines, result sheet monitoring, and the kind of election day ground operation that wins a presidential race. That is the question the NDC must answer between now and January 16, 2027. Can a party registered in February 2026, less than 12 months before a presidential election, build that machine in time? Here is what we know about how they are trying. 9-Jab Brief is where you come when you want to understand how Nigerian politics actually works, not just what happened, but why it matters. Subscribe now and let's get into the blueprint. Before we get to the alliance, you need to understand what the NDC was before Obi and Kwankwaso arrived, because that context matters enormously for understanding what they walked into. The Nigeria Democratic Congress was formally registered by INEC in February 2026. It is on paper a young party, but it is not a shell. It was founded and is chaired by Seriake Dickson, former governor of Bayelsa State, former Senate Committee chairman, and one of the most operationally experienced politicians in the South-South. Dickson's political network spans the Niger Delta's most consequential communities, and his institutional credibility gave the NDC something that most new parties lack: a founder with a genuine personal structure to seed the party's initial infrastructure. When Obi and Kwankwaso formally received their membership cards on May 4, 2026, Dickson set the terms immediately. He told them and the Hall that the NDC would not operate as a personality cult, a political movement, or a special purpose vehicle to be used and discarded. That warning was not directed at the press, it was directed at the two men sitting in the front row. He was telling them, you can bring your movements into this party, but the party will outlast your campaigns. Within days, the NDC held its inaugural national convention on May 9, 2026. The convention formally adopted the party's constitution, ratified its leadership positions, and passed the resolution that would define the entire 2027 campaign, the zoning of the presidential ticket to southern Nigeria. The convention also resolved a unique and potentially contentious structural commitment, a single 4-year term for the presidency rather than the standard 2 terms. This proposal, framed as enabling rapid power rotation, gives Obi's candidacy a self-limiting character that his team believes will reassure a northern electorate anxious about southeast dominance. Whether it survives constitutional challenge if NDC wins is a different question. For now, it is a campaign promise with strategic intent. The NDC's stated theory of victory is built on a simple geometric logic. Combine Kwankwaso's depth in the northwest with Obi's breadth across the south and north-central, and you have a national footprint large enough to clear the constitutional 25% in 24 states threshold, and to aggregate enough raw votes to beat an APC candidate who won in 2023 with 36.6% of valid votes. Kwankwaso brings Kano, and Kano in Nigerian electoral arithmetic is not just a city, it is the single largest voter concentration in the country, a state where Kwankwaso's movement turned out reliably for him in 2023, even when the national infrastructure of his party was collapsing around him. The Kwankwasiyya is not a movement that depends on party machinery. It has its own symbol, the red cap, its own identity, its own loyalty infrastructure built through years of scholarships, community investment, and personal political relationships. It does not follow a party ticket, it follows a man. Obi brings the Southeast, the FCT, and a disproportionately urban, disproportionately youth-driven constituency that cuts across the South-South, the Southwest pockets of economic frustration, and the North-Central cities where the Obidient movement found an unexpected resonance in 2023. He also brings a documented ability to raise campaign finance from diaspora networks in the UK, the US, and Canada, a funding channel that is less vulnerable to federal government pressure on local donors than conventional political financing. Dickson brings the South-South anchor, and the South-South matters not just for votes, but for the coalition's claim to national legitimacy. With Obi from the Southeast, Kwankwaso from the Northwest, and Dickson from the South-South, the NDC's leadership geography covers 3 of Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones at the highest level, a broader regional spread than many presidential coalitions have managed. On May 31st, Obi formally named Kwankwaso as his vice presidential candidate. The announcement ended weeks of speculation and confirmed the ticket that had been assumed since the convention. Supporters of both movements, now officially the OK movement, raised 60 million naira jointly to purchase the presidential nomination form. That crowdfunding was not a financial necessity, it was a deliberate political act designed to demonstrate that this ticket has grassroots financial backing, not just elite sponsorship. The architecture is in place. Now comes the stress test. Within 3 weeks of the NDC's triumphant May convention, the party's most important state chapter was in internal crisis. Here is what happened. When Kwankwaso and his Kwankwasiyya bloc formally joined the NDC, the party negotiated an internal sharing formula for elective ticket allocations in Kano State. 60% of House of Assembly and House of Representatives tickets would go to existing NDC members, 40% would go to Kwankwasiyya newcomers. It was a reasonable compromise on paper. In practice, the Kwankwasiyya's camp's weight made it impossible to enforce. The NDC's Kano chapter, dominated by the Kwankwasiyya's organizing capacity, allocated tickets in a pattern that old members said bore no resemblance to the agreed formula. Discontent erupted publicly. Several House of Representatives and State Assembly seats were reallocated by the NDC's National Executive Committee in an attempt to rebalance the distribution. The Kwankwasiyya spokesperson dismissed the complaints as baseless and questioned why grievances were raised nearly 10 days after the primaries had concluded. The NDC's national leadership pledged transparency and accountability, insisting it was building an institution, not a patronage network. But the damage to internal trust was visible. And then came the exit rumor. Reports circulated, strong enough to require a formal denial from the NDC's National Publicity Secretary, that Kwankwaso was threatening to leave the party over the candidate selection disputes. The spokesman denied it categorically. Kwankwaso had never contemplated leaving. But political analysts who track coalition dynamics were not entirely reassured by a denial. The structural tension they identified was real, regardless of whether Kwankwaso leaves or stays. His supporters' loyalty is to him personally, not to the NDC institutionally. If the Kwankwaso movement ever concludes that the NDC is not serving its political interests in Kano primaries, in ticket allocations, and in post-election power sharing, the rational response in Nigerian politics is departure. As one analyst put it with unusual bluntness, if Kwankwaso walks, his northern structure follows, and if his northern structure follows, the 2027 NDC calculation collapses. The Kano fault line is the existential risk inside the Rainbow Coalition, not the APC, not INE, the relationship between two movements that each believe they are the senior partner. Here is the question I want you to answer in the comments. Which is more dangerous for the NDC, the APC's incumbency advantage or the Kwankwasiyya Obidient internal tension? Drop your take below. I read every single one. Let us do what Nigerian political coverage almost never does. Go zone by zone and assess the NDC's actual electoral prospects honestly without cheerleading or dismissal. Northwest. This is the NDC's strongest zone. Kwankwaso's Kano base is real, measurable, and institutionalized. In 2023, he won Kano State convincingly in a three-way presidential race. The NDC's path to the 25% threshold and to a competitive national vote total runs through Kano and its satellite states. If the Kwankwasiyya holds together, the NDC is genuinely competitive here. If it fractures, the NDC loses its most important asset. Southeast. This is Obi's home zone and the NDC's most emotionally committed territory. The Obidient movement is structurally alive here, but, as the zone-by-zone analysis from the Sun Nigeria identified, winning presidential votes in the southeast is different from winning governorship or assembly seats, which require ward-level machine politics that the NDC does not yet have in the zone. The NDC will win presidential votes here. It will struggle to convert that into the full-ticket performance that would make it a governing coalition after 2027. North Central. The NDC's strongest surprise zone. Cities like Abuja, Jos, Makurdi, and Lokoja showed genuine Obidient movement penetration in 2023, driven by economic frustration, religious pluralism, and a youth electorate that is less attached to the APC-PDP duopoly. The NDC has real potential in urban north-central constituencies. South-South. This is where Dickson value is most concentrated and most tested. The South-South gave Atiku significant votes in 2023 and has a complex relationship with both the APC and the Southeast political movement. Dickson's Bayelsa roots give the NDC a credible entry point. The NDC's youth wing in Bayelsa has attracted genuine membership, not just paid attendance. Rivers State, the most consequential South-South battleground, remains chaotic following the Wike Fubara crisis, which creates both risk and opportunity. Southwest. This is the NDC's hardest zone. Lagos is APC territory at a structural level. Tinubu's personal political infrastructure is most concentrated here, and the 2023 Peter Obi win in Lagos was the exception that proved the rule of APC dominance. The NDC needs to be competitive in Lagos, Oyo, and Ogun to clear the 25% threshold in enough states. It will need significant Obidient movement mobilization and a compelling economic message in a zone where cost of living grievances are acute. Northeast, the NDC's weakest zone. APC dominates, security instability suppresses turnout in key constituencies, and neither Obi nor Kwankwaso has deep personal networks here. The NDC's strategy is to limit losses, not to win. The NDC's blueprint is real. The alliance is real. The ticket is confirmed. The energy is visible. But between May 2026 and January 16, 2027, the NDC must demonstrate 5 things that it has not yet demonstrated, and the degree to which it succeeds on each will determine whether 2027 is a competitive race or a repeat of 2023's impressive but insufficient result. 1. Polling unit coverage. Nigeria has 176,000 registered polling units. A party wins by having trusted, trained, and deployed agents at every polling unit. People who witness counting, sign result sheets, and photograph BVAS readouts. The NDC must recruit, train, and deploy that network nationwide before January. The Obidient movement crowdfunded platforms and social media energy in 2023. It did not produce 176,000 polling unit agents. That gap must close. 2. Kwankwasiyya retention. The Kano ticket dispute is a warning signal that requires active management. If Kwankwaso's movement is still fully inside the NDC in November 2026, the coalition is competitive. If it is not, the race changes fundamentally. 3. Result transmission integrity. Obi's team learned in 2023 that winning votes is not enough if the collation process is compromised. The NDC must deploy lawyers and collation center agents with the same density as polling unit agents. The final result is determined at the ward and LGA collation centers, not at the polling units. 4. Legislative ticket coherence. A presidential candidate without a legislative platform is a candidate without governance capacity, even if they win. The NDC's House of Representatives and Senate candidate slate must be credible, geographically diverse, and free from the kind of internal ticket disputes that have already erupted in Kano and been flagged in the FCT by Aisha Yesufu. 5. The turnout translation. The same problem from 2023 persists in 2026. Youth voter registration is strong, 68% of new registrants in the latest INEC phase, but February 2026 by-elections showed turnout of 7% in FCT, Rivers and Kano. The NDC must solve the gap between registration and election day presence. No amount of social media momentum closes that gap on its own.
The NDC blueprint is the most detailed and operationally serious opposition strategy Nigeria has seen in a generation. The Obi-Kwankwaso ticket has more structural weight than the 2023 Labour Party campaign. The party has a legitimate founder with genuine networks. The convention was held, the zoning decision was made, the ticket is confirmed. The manifesto covers security, healthcare, education, agriculture, energy and electoral reform in more specific language than most Nigerian campaign documents produce. And Seriake Dickson's warning at the convention was perhaps the most important thing said at any Nigerian political gathering this year. This party will not be a personality cult, it will be an institution. Whether that warning holds, whether the NDC becomes something that survives Obi's campaign, something that outlasts Kwankwaso's ambition, something that builds ward structures in Kebbi and Ondo and Plateau that still exist in 2031, is the real test. Because Nigeria's reform movement does not need another opposition campaign that comes close and loses. It needs a political institution, one that can govern if it wins and organize if it loses. The NDC has 7 months to prove it is that institution. The clock started in May. Share this video with one Nigerian who wants to understand what the NDC is actually building, not just that it exists. Like, subscribe, and I will